Blame it on El Nino, a winter storm packing a punch today with heavy rain and mountain snow, plus powerful waves slamming into the coast and the challenges for people who are looking for shelter in the storm.
Can I get your signature for the right to vote on the minimum wage referendum? This just puts the issue on the ballot so the voters can educate themselves on it.
The latest in the fight to raise the minimum wage, why business groups may be giving up their campaign to block it. He's ready for his close-up, the newest and cutest member of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. What made researchers so excited about his birth? You're watching Evening Edition on KPBS. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The second round of an El Nino storm system slammed into San Diego today. Heavy rain pelted cars on the morning commute. You can see drivers plowing through high waters on the Interstate 15 connector to the 8. The storm delivered widespread downpours, big waves at the beaches, and mountain snow. Parts of the East County were under a winter storm advisory. Strong winds from the storm system left behind this mess in San Diego. Crews were on the scene in Del Mar Heights, where downed trees blocked off streets. They spent the morning cutting up limbs and moving tree trunks out of the way. And the wave of hazardous storms caused problems for anyone involved in homeless sweeps in San Diego. Our team coverage begins with KPBS reporter Steve Walsh. He shows us how the rain was more than an inconvenience.
Throughout San Diego, there were signs that heavy rain was making life difficult. Business owners laid sandbags along Newport Avenue and Ocean Beach.
Getting ready for the big one. Once there's been some rainy days, and then if a big one comes, the rain rushes down the hill. And
elsewhere in San Diego, Steve Hilliard was upset the city went through with its scheduled homeless sweeps. They removed tents and personal property from beneath the underpass at Commercial Street.
They do it all the time when it's like wintertime. Take your tents down. You can't have a tent up. It's raining. They don't care, you know? And I don't understand why it's like that.
In a statement, San Diego police spokeswoman Lisa McKean said the sweeps began around 6:30 prior to the storm and ended when the rain began. Some people were arrested for outstanding warrants. Their belongings were bagged and held by police. Hilliard says people began returning just after police left to seek shelter from Monday's high wind and rain. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
And students in Julian went home early today because of snow. Officials at Julian Union School District and Julian Union High called for the early closure so students could return home safely. They expect classes to resume tomorrow with an hour-and-a-half delay. High surf also pounded our coast today. How will that affect the surf conditions over the next couple of days? We check in with Scott Bass from the KPBS Surf Report.
You can tell the air temperature's already getting colder. Yeah. You can feel it dropping. When it clears up, it gets chilly.
Surf reporter Scott Bass is assessing the beach conditions during a break from today's powerful El Nino storm. Gusty winds and surf up to 10 feet threaten the coast with flooding, especially around high tide. This includes beach parking lots, roadways, and walking paths along the coast.
Certainly today is a horrible day for anybody to get in the water. But as things clean up over the next couple of days and these swells continue to arrive along San Diego's coastline, it's going to be ideal again for surfers that understand the conditions. If you're a beginner, you're going to want to stay away for a while.
The surf and strong rip currents mean swimming conditions are dangerous now, but water will also be polluted with runoff for about 72 hours after the rain stops.
Probably the hardcore amongst us as far as the surf community might find their way into the water on Wednesday, but again, not advised. Yeah, right now it's pretty ferocious out there, you know, it's disheveled, it's unruly.
The National Weather Service says the threat of damaging surf will diminish on Tuesday.
In your heart of hearts, if it looks dangerous, it probably is. There's a saying, if in doubt, don't paddle out. So I would just advise, go on the extreme side of common sense here.
San Diego residents who want sandbags can pick them up at several recreation centers around the city. There is a pickup center in each district. City officials say sandbags are no longer available at fire and lifeguard stations. County residents can go to readysandiego.org/El Nino for pickup locations. And San Diego may get a break from the wet weather tomorrow. Heather Waldman says there will be more rain later this week in tonight's KPBS weather report.
Well, it was quite a morning in California. Nasty thunderstorms moved through just in time for the morning rush. Nothing you want to see. Winds knocked trees and power poles down. They're still working on restoring power in some spots. Latest satellite and radar shows that we do still have a few showers out there, but the heaviest of that rain and the worst of that wind, thankfully, coming to an end. And as we go through tonight, we'll continue to see the showers lessen, but these waves of heavy rain continue to dump on the area as we go through this afternoon, picking up close to an inch of rain in some spots. The rain is welcome, the winds not so much. Again, as we go through tonight, these showers become far less numerous. Some clouds lingering early. Temperatures will be in the upper 40s to middle 50s as we go through tonight. So not terribly cold behind the system, but thankfully drier air is going to start to move in as we go through the day on Tuesday. And that's going to allow us for a couple of days to help clean up any of the downed trees and restore the power to those that don't quite have it yet. It'll still be breezy into the mountainous areas of eastern Southern California, so do keep that in mind if you're going to be traveling out towards the Four Corners over the next couple of days. Let's get to that 5-day forecast. We'll start you off with the coast. A lot of clouds around throughout Tuesday, but again, staying dry. It's going to be a brief dry out, though, because look at this. Wednesday into Thursday, more rain comes in. It's going to be heavy at times, and we'll see some breezy conditions as well. But looking good here for the end of the week, into the start of the weekend. Partly to mostly sunny Friday and Saturday. High temperatures will be in the mid-60s. Lows will be in the mid to upper 40s. Farther inland, temperatures getting held into the low to mid-60s in most places, and that rain is going to be heavy at times. Again, it'll start Wednesday morning, continue into Wednesday afternoon, and could be heavy throughout the day on Thursday. Mix of clouds and sunshine coming up for both Friday and Saturday. With the sun, it is going to start to warm up. Overnight lows aren't going to be dropping too much. They'll be in the lower to middle 50s over the next couple of nights. Here's what we're looking at in the mountains. We'll get some rain there, too, and it could be heavy as we go through Thursday. Of course, the highest peaks could get a little bit of snow as those snow levels drop. Temperatures will generally be in the upper 30s, but overnight lows will be in the upper 20s and lower 30s. Friday and Saturday, again, looking better, feeling warmer, and enjoying more sunshine as well. Temperatures will be in the mid-20s to low 30s overnight. Here's a look at your desert forecast. Couple of showers will make it in there Wednesday evening into the day on Thursday. It's not going to be that heavy rain that we see at the coast, but nonetheless could provide for a few delays. Looking sunny Friday and into the day on Saturday. Heather Waldman, KPBS News.
And our coverage on the El Nino storms continues on air on KPBS Radio and online at kpbs.org. That's where you'll find any updates on road closures and weather alerts. Looks like San Diegans will not get a chance to vote on a convention center expansion in June. A spokesman for Mayor Kevin Faulconer confirms that the mayor is looking to put the proposal on a later ballot when it might stand a better chance of passing. In January, the mayor said he would ask voters to fund a convention center expansion with an increase in hotel room taxes. Minimum wage workers in San Diego would have been earning $10.50 an hour today. That's if business groups hadn't blocked a pay hike approved by the city council. Now, KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser says the business groups who successfully stalled the increase may be giving up their campaign to stop the raise permanently.
In the summer of 2014, San Diegans heard a lot of this at the grocery store.
Ma'am, can I get your signature for the right to vote on the minimum wage referendum? This just puts the issue on the ballot so the voters can educate themselves on it and decide if they want the increase or don't.
Now that ballot has come. The city council had raised the minimum wage to $11.50 an hour starting in 2017, but business groups got enough signatures to block the wage hike unless voters approve it in June. At the time, Chamber of Commerce CEO Jerry Sanders heralded the accomplishment.
We're prepared to wage an aggressive education effort so that voters understand what this means to our economy and the loss of jobs.
Now it seems wage increase opponents aren't so confident.
An issue like this is going to take significant resources if we're going to prevail.
Jason Rowe is a political consultant working on the anti-minimum wage increase campaign.
We need to see what everyone's appetite is in terms of the resources that they're willing to spend to be victorious.
A poll paid for by the San Diego and Imperial Counties Labor Council found that 63% of voters approve of raising the minimum wage. Rowe says those numbers may be hard to overcome. He also points to state efforts to raise the minimum wage even higher, making a local opposition effort irrelevant.
I'm not buying it.
City Councilman Todd Glorious supports the wage increase. He thinks the opposition is lying.
During the referendum process, the tactics that the opponents of the minimum wage increase used were so deceptive and so dishonest that I don't believe them when they claim that they're not going to mount a fight.
Glorious says the state efforts at a pay hike don't mean he's going to sit back. San Diego's wage decision is certain, while what's happening at the state remains unclear.
And I believe that San Diegans need a raise, and that's why we must push hard to make sure this is successful in June.
Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
The mayor of Carlsbad is taking stock of the defeat of Measure A at the polls, even though the project had the unanimous support of the city council. KPBS North County Bureau reporter Allison St. John says Mayor Matt Hall does not regret the council's vote.
Mayor Matt Hall says he's got the message that citizens don't want a high-end shopping centre on the shores of the Agua Hedionda Lagoon. He says he'll sit down with opponents to try to close the rift that split the community in a 52 to 48% vote.
Let's calm down and think about what makes Carlsbad great, and let's keep working towards that.
But Hall says he does not regret voting to approve the initiative last summer rather than putting it on the ballot back then. Many opponents were angry when the city council approved the plan, forcing a referendum to overturn their vote.
I've never really thought about that. I mean, I did what I thought was right at the time, and I haven't really looked back on my decision.
Hall says it's up to the developer to gauge community sentiment when launching a project. In this case, the decision to sidestep normal environmental review and use the initiative process led to the measure's defeat. Allison St. John, KPBS News.
The race for the White House continues tomorrow with 6 contests scheduled in 4 states. Republicans Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and John Kasich are battling for delegates in Hawaii and Idaho, Michigan, and Mississippi. While Democrats Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders look to increase their delegate counts in Michigan and Mississippi. Over the weekend, 6 states and Puerto Rico held primaries. Cruz won 69 delegates to Trump's 53, but Trump is leading with 384 delegates to Cruz's 300. On the Democratic side, Sanders walked away from the weekend with 67 delegates to Clinton's 64. Sanders winning 3 out of 4 contests, but just barely eclipsing Clinton's big win in Louisiana, which netted her 37 delegates. Clinton has more than 1,100 delegates pledged to Sanders' 500. After nearly 2 years at the helm of the lower chamber of the legislature, San Diego Democrat Tony Atkins stepped down today to pass the torch to a new assembly leader. Assemblyman Anthony Rendon was sworn in as the 70th speaker to lead the state's legislature. He is a Democrat from the Los Angeles area. His swearing in also marks the first time in the state's history both the Assembly and Senate have been led by Latino Americans. Rendon is best known for opposing many of Governor Jerry Brown's views on education and the environment. With the new term limits that allow assembly members to stay in office up to 12 years, Rendon may stay speaker for nearly a decade. KQED political editor Scott Schaefer spoke with the man who has landed one of the state's most powerful jobs.
What have you learned growing up in a working class family that you're going to take with you in this new job as speaker?
The job of being an assembly member, the job of being a legislator can be very abstract. We deal in huge and we deal with programs, not with people. We deal with in terms of billions of dollars. To have those sort of real life experiences, not only in my family growing up, but also running nonprofit organizations for 20 years. So to be able to hearken back to those memories, to those families that we served, is something that's really valuable to me, I think.
You are taking over as speaker after years and years of a revolving door of speakerships because of term limits. You could be around for quite a while. So what's on your short list of things to accomplish?
Certainly addressing poverty and sort of various mechanisms for dealing with poverty. It's something that, as a Democrat, I believe we haven't done a good job of talking about at all, let alone dealing with. So I'm going to look at things like the minimum wage is something that's very important to me. Healthcare is something that's very important to me. Addressing the housing crisis is very important to me as well. Specific to the minimum wage, more than half of California is already at $15 because of various local ordinances. It just doesn't seem fair to some communities that they pay higher wages than others. So if anything, getting the entire state to $15 an hour is just sort of something that'll level the playing field for businesses.
Although if you're a business in Fresno, you would say, well, my workers don't have the same cost of living as, say, your constituents do in Southern California. Should there be a kind of regionally different minimum wages?
Those who represent Fresno, those who represent Bakersfield have made those arguments, so it's certainly something we're going to look at. We're not close to the idea at all.
And when you're a legislator, there are always people with lots of money, lobbyists, business interests, trying to distract you from some of those goals and trying to get you to think about issues the way they want you to.
Yep.
How are you going to keep your eye on the ball?
I represent 9 cities. I represent the city of Linwood, which a couple of years ago had the second highest unemployment rate in the country, just behind Pontiac, Michigan. So if you keep focusing back, not on the lobbyists who are in your office, but on the people back in the district, I think that's who we're here to serve.
So when you become Speaker, both leaders in the legislature, you and Kevin De Leon, the Senate President Pro Tem, are going to be Latino men from Southern California. What's the significance of that?
It's significant because it's the first time it's happened. The second question we should be asking is it good? And Kevin and I are people who work with every caucus. We're people who work with diverse communities.
There are some folks up north who might think their interests aren't going to be addressed by two leaders from Southern California. What would you say to them?
The water bond is a perfect example of that. If there's anything in California that divides us in any way, but particularly north-south, it's the issue of water. People kept saying there's no way you're going to be able to get a water bond through. I authored the water bond. We worked on it for 18 months, and we were able to get it through.
The Latino caucus has grown tremendously in the past 20 years. It's really eclipsed the African American caucus, and there's some tension between those two groups in the legislature and in Congress as well in California. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's interesting. There was a story recently in the Sacramento Bee where it said ethnic tension ripping apart the assembly, and it was a picture of me hugging an African-American man who I've endorsed for Congress, who's endorsed me in every single office I've ever run for. I think a lot of that is overplayed.
You're becoming Speaker at a time when there's a lot of anger among voters. We hear it in the presidential election. We've seen it at the convention here in San Jose. People want bankers to go to jail and that kind of thing. What can you say to those folks that you're going to be looking out for them as well, the people who feel left out?
So I think a lot of those questions, a lot of the issues relating to anger, totally understood, totally understandable. It's our job to address those through oversight and through legislation.
And last question, what do you do for fun?
What I do for fun, I'm a big runner. I like to listen to music. I love art. My first job was in a contemporary art museum, and I love to read.
What kind of music do you like?
Music, I like punk.
Punk? You're like a Renaissance man.
Yeah, I have various interests.
Assembly Speaker Anthony Rendon talking with KQED's political editor Scott Schaefer. The data encryption fight continues today between Apple and the federal government. The Justice Department filed an appeal today protesting a ruling that sided with the Silicon Valley company. The ruling said Apple could not be forced to provide access to locked data on iPhones. The ruling covers the same legal ground in the San Bernardino shooting case. Apple's pushback has fueled a national debate over digital privacy rights and national security. An alleged weapons shortage in the U.S. military may be affecting the nation's top operatives. San Diego Congressman Duncan Hunter is pushing for the SEALs to have their own personal weapon, even when they have returned from deployment. Currently, combat rifles are rotated between those returning home and commandos who are shipping out. Hunter says not providing SEALs with personal weapons for training is problematic. U.S. military officials say they will look into the issue and give maintenance to older weapons to increase the supply. 2 San Diego companies rank as some of the most ethical in the world. According to the Arizona-based Ethisphere Institute, Petco and Sharp Healthcare scored high in compliance programs, corporate citizenship, and responsibility, leadership, and reputation. The 10th annual list includes 131 companies in 21 countries. Among other U.S. companies on the list were Aflac, 3M, Ford Motor Company, Marriott, and Starbucks. Today, the Scripps Research Institute announced the discovery of a molecule that helps slow the growth of certain types of cancer. They say it works by inhibiting the production of an amino acid that's part of the growth process for breast cancer, lung cancer, and melanoma. But the molecule didn't help with other types of cancer. New questions tonight about a possible conflict of interest in higher education. California lawmakers are taking a closer look at how University of California chancellors are allowed to make money. Legislators want to regulate their earnings off campus. This comes after the head of UC Davis was found to be serving on for-profit corporate boards. Linda Katehi made more than $400,000 sitting on the board of a textbook company. Now she is offering a $200,000 scholarship as an apology.
Well, I think it's very disappointing and shows poor judgment that our chancellor, who already makes, over $400,000, has a time to moonlight for corporate boards and corporate boards that run contrary to the mission of the people of California.
Some legislators are asking her to resign. Lawmakers will be meeting committees over the next few months to discuss legislation to change UC policies. Flags are flying at half-staff today for former First Lady Nancy Reagan. She passed away over the weekend. Her funeral is set for Friday at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley. Associated Press reporter Padmananda Rama tracks her life from the silver screen to the White House.
Former First Lady Nancy Davis Reagan has died. She was born in 1921, but Nancy Reagan says her life really began when she married her husband, Ronald Reagan. In the 1920s, the future First Lady was adopted by a Chicago family. By the time she graduated school, then Nancy Davis became a professional actress. She landed a role on Broadway and several leading Hollywood roles.
Somehow I feel it's all my fault.
She met Ronald Reagan, a strapping young actor, in 1951. By the next year, the two were married in Los Angeles, a marriage that would last for 52 years. Mrs. Reagan retired from her Hollywood work and became a full-time mom. Ronald Reagan also changed roles, entering the world of politics. In 1967, Reagan was elected the governor of California, and Nancy Reagan began working with numerous charitable groups. She spent many hours visiting veterans, the elderly, and the emotional and physically handicapped. But it was her role as First Lady of the United States that pushed Nancy Reagan into the national spotlight.
Congratulations, sir.
While it was clear that Nancy Reagan liked to be at her husband's side, she was also a very strong, independent woman, even campaigning independently for her husband. Once in office during her first years in the executive mansion, she directed a major renovation of the second and third floor quarters. While the changes, particularly the spending, were criticized at the time, many of the modifications still exist today and have become a historical part of the White House.
Just say no. Ooh, yeah.
During her husband's years in office, Reagan is credited with starting the Just Say No anti-drug awareness campaign.
What should you do when someone offers you drugs?
Say no!
What will you do when someone offers you drugs?
Say no!
She visited prevention and rehabilitation centers, and in 1985 held a conference at the White House for First Ladies of 17 countries to focus international attention on this problem. Nancy Reagan also gave her support to the foster grandparent program, the subject of her 1982 book, To Love a Child. Reagan also greatly contributed to her husband's efforts as president. In 1985, 87, and 88, while the Cold War was being waged, Nancy Reagan met with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev's wife. The two women often had tea and discussed differences between the then USSR and the United States. When Ronald Reagan died of Alzheimer's disease in June of 2004, the nation watched as Nancy Reagan said goodbye to her husband over a week-long state funeral. These images brought America to tears as Nancy kissed the coffin of her beloved husband, Ronnie, saying farewell for the last time. Until her own death, Nancy Reagan resided in California, devoted to many of her lifelong causes, including supporting the GOP. She made a rare public appearance for her 91st birthday at the opening of a Walt Disney exhibit at the Reagan Presidential Library. Nancy Reagan held fast to her belief in love, honesty, and selflessness, saying these ideals have endured because they are right, and are no less right today than yesterday. Padmananda Rama, The Associated Press.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, I join the Atlantic Magazine's James Fallows on his journey to find out how America is putting itself back together. That's Monday on the PBS News Hour.
The next big deal on YouTube is the furry new member of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. This sea otter pup was born over the weekend. You can see Mom is grooming him to keep him warm and safe. Aquarium officials say their researchers have been watching wild otters for years, but had never been able to see a birth close up like this before. That video earned more than 52,000 hits on YouTube in the last 24 hours. It's official, San Diego State's student-run radio station is the best in the nation.
So our winner for the best radio station in the nation, the Abraham and Borst Award from IBS for 2016. I cannot delay it any longer, but I don't want to hear their screams because they've been so loud, KCR.
On Saturday, KCR College Radio took home the top prize at the 76th Annual Intercollegiate Broadcasting System Conference. The award ceremony was held in New York City, and this is the first time KCR has won the award. They've been broadcasting on the SDSU campus since 1969, and we, of course, congratulate them. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. From all of us here at KPBS, thanks for watching.